So one question to ask ourselves is, what is engineering? Okay, how do we define what is engineering? Well, the definition I like to use is one put forth by Steve Centuria, one of our professors who's now retired. He defined engineering to be the purposeful use of science. All right? So then, what is 6002 about? So 6002 is the first course in engineering, and I like to view 6002 as the gainful employment of Maxwell's equations. Okay, many of you have seen Maxwell's equations before. Most of you should have. And they're hard stuff. Okay, 6002 is all about teaching you how to simplify our lives, make things simple. So we can gainfully employ Maxwell's equations, gainfully employ the facts of nature to build very interesting systems. So let me show you how that transition is made. So there's the world around us, nature, and so we make some observations in nature, we make measurements, and we can write down large tables of measurements. So for example, we can take objects and measure the voltage across them and look at the resulting current through the elements. So we may end up getting a bunch of values such as so we start out life with making measurements on what exists, and we build a bunch of tables. Now, we could directly take these tables, and based on our observations in these tables, we could go ahead and build very interesting, engineer interesting systems that help us out in day-to-day lives. But that's incredibly hard. Imagine having to resort to a set of tables to do any kind of useful work. So what we do as engineers is we first layer a level of abstraction. Okay? We look at all this data and somehow layer an abstraction such that we can simplify or much more succinctly put in a simple equation or in a simple statement what these numbers are telling us. Okay? So, for example, our physics laws. So laws of physics, for example, are simply abstractions. Laws are abstractions. So these sets of numbers can be codified by Ohm's law, for example. V is equal to Ri, the voltage current, relates to the resistance of the object. So V is equal to Ri is a law that succinctly describes a set of experiments, okay, and replaces a large number of tables with a very simple statement. You could call this a law, or you could call it an abstraction. Okay, so you've seen laws of physics. Call them abstractions of physics, if you like. Similarly, there are Maxwell's equations, and so on and so forth. So this is what is. Okay, this is out there. Okay, and our laws and abstractions describe the properties of nature as we see it in some succinct form. Now, if you want to go and build useful things, we could take these abstractions, take Maxwell's equations, and go and build things. But it's hard. It's really, really hard. And what you will learn at MIT is this place is all about simplifying things. Okay, take complicated things, build layers of abstraction, simplify things so that we can build useful systems. Okay, even in 6002, we start life by making a huge leap from Maxwell's equations to a couple of very, very simple laws. Okay, I'm going to show you that leap that we're going to make today. So the first abstraction that we layer is called the lumped circuit abstraction. Okay, and in the lumped circuit abstraction, what we do is we make a set of simplifications that allows us to view a set of objects as discrete or lumped elements. So we'll define voltage sources, we'll define resistors, we'll define capacitors, and so on. Okay, and I'm going to make this jump and show you how we make this jump in a few minutes. So on that set of abstractions, we then layer yet another abstract layer, and let me call that the amplifier abstraction. Okay, remember, here we are absolutely down and dirty. We're sitting with probes, measuring objects, and building huge tables. We abstracted things into simple laws, and life got a little better. Okay, I'm going to show you can abstract things further out and build discrete objects, and then you can build even more interesting components called amplifiers and begin playing around with amplifiers. Okay, so when you're using amplifiers, you don't really have to worry about the details of Maxwell's equations. Okay, I'll give you some very simple abstract rules of behavior for an amplifier, and you can go build very interesting systems without really knowing how Maxwell's equations applies to that, because you will be working at this abstract layer. However, since you're engineers and you're going to be building such systems, it's very important for you to understand how we make this leap from laws of physics into some of our very primitive engineering abstractions. So once we make the amplifier abstraction in 6002, by the way, 6002 starts here. We start from the laws of physics and then proceeds all the way out. So once we talk about amplifiers, we will take two paths. On the amplifier, we will build the next abstraction called the digital abstraction. Okay, and with the digital abstraction, we will build new elements such as inverters and combinational gates. Okay, so notice we're building bigger and bigger things which have more and more complicated behavior inside them, but which are very simple to describe. All right, so following the digital abstraction, we will superpose the combinational logic abstraction on top of that and define functional blocks that look like this: some inputs, some function, some outputs. The next abstraction on top of that will be the clocked digital abstraction, where we will have some notion of time introduced into the system. There'll be a clock, and this will be some function, and there'll be a clock that introduces time into the set of logic values that functions operate upon. Following that, the next level of abstraction that we build is called the instruction set abstraction. Okay, now you begin to see things that consumers get to look at. Can someone give me an example of a name of an instruction set or an instruction set abstraction? x86, bingo. Okay, so x86 is one set of abstractions, and in fact, in many universities, education could well start just by saying, okay, here's an abstraction. These are the x86 instructions. Okay, some MIT gurus have designed this awesome little microprocessor. Okay, so you just worry about, you take this abstraction layer here, these assembly instructions, and you go and build systems on top of that.